Good day, dear guest, and be swept away by the story of Anunnaki's Atlantis, a tapestry of words delicately crafted by StoryWave.ai. We're honored by your visit. Like, share, and subscribe to be part of our storytelling family. Chapter 1, The Dawn Herald. The air was brisk, filled with the salty tang of the sea and the promise of a new day. Our once vibrant metropolis, now a collection of crumbling edifices and flooded causeways, lay silent but for the persistent lapping of water against stone. We, the survivors, had gathered at the Temple of the Morning Star, a pharos of hope and a colloquy to our unwavering resolve to rebuild from the ashes. As I stood among my people, a hush fell upon the crowd. From the shimmering veil of dawn, a figure descended, ethereal and resplendent. His presence was as the turning of a page in the archives of history, the beginning of a new chapter for the children of Atlantis. He was Sariel, the Watcher, an emissary of the Nephilim, beings of legend whose tales were interwoven with our own since time immemorial. His voice, like the melody of the spheres, resonated through the plaza. "Children of Atlantis," he proclaimed, his words carrying the weight of eons, "I come bearing the dawn of a new covenant. The epoch of isolation has ended, and the time has come to rise once more, to reclaim the wisdom you have lost, and to forge a future bright with possibility." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Could this celestial envoy truly herald the renaissance of our fallen grandeur? My heart quickened with hope, yet my mind, ever the scholar's, wrestled with skepticism. The promise was a tantalizing one, but our trust had been eroded by the very tides that had sought to devour us. "You speak of covenants and bright futures," I found myself saying, my voice steady, but laced with the caution born of experience. Yet promises are as easily shattered as our once glorious spires. How can we trust that this is not another harbinger of doom? Sariel's gaze, ancient and knowing, met mine. "Terra Starborn, your wisdom serves you well. Trust must be earned, not freely given. But know this, the Nephilim have watched you from afar, and we have seen the strength of your kind, the buoyancy that beats within your hearts. It is not doom I bring, but the chance to reach heights undreamt of, to heal the wounds of the past and to build anew." The crowd around me buzzed with anxious energy, a tempest of fear and wonder. Some voices rose in excitement, eager to embrace the promise of guidance from our celestial kin. Others, scarred by the memory of what we had lost, clung to their doubt like a shield against further despair. As the day wore on, Sariel shared with us tales of the cosmos, of worlds beyond our ken, where knowledge flowed as freely as the waters that had once consumed our city. He spoke of alliances forged across the stars, of civilizations that had risen from adversity to grasp the mantle of galactic custodians. The sun climbed higher, casting its light upon the ruins, and with each word from the Nephilim's envoy, the shadows seemed to retreat, as though banished by the prospect of enlightenment. We conversed, we debated, we questioned, and as the journey of that day drew to a close, it was clear that the arrival of Sariel had ignited a flame within our hearts, a flame that could either illuminate our path or consume us once more in its fervor. The legacy of Atlantis, intertwined with the wisdom of the Anunnaki, now hung in the balance. It was a legacy that we would either honor with our resurgence or betray with our fall. The choice lay before us, stark and undeniable, as the herald of dawn etched a new fate upon the canvas of our destiny. Chapter 2, Covenant of the Ancients. As the tides are swayed by the moon's caress, so too can the fortunes of Atlantis be shifted. Sariel began, his voice a melodious timbre that filled the chamber with an undeniable authority. "I offer you not simply tools or ephemeral aid, but the very essence of progress. What I present to you is the wisdom of the ancients, the heritage of the Nephilim. I stood among my fellow Atlanteans, the erudite and the artisans, the philosophers and the laborers, all united by a single thread of desperation. We had survived the deluge, but our spirit was adrift, seeking a lodestar to guide us back to our former glory. A device of unknown metals and pulsing lights lay before us, an enigma that promised to unravel the very fabric of our understanding. This," Sariel continued, gesturing to the object with a grace that seemed to bend the air around him, "is but a glimpse of what awaits. A means to harness the energies that course unseen through the cosmos, to once again elevate your kind beyond the boundaries of this tattered realm." The chamber erupted into a clatter of voices. Some hailed the Nephilim's offer as the salvation we had been yearning for, a chance to ascend from the ashes of our hubris. Others recoiled at the notion of binding ourselves to the ways of those we scarcely understood, and fearing the price of such knowledge might eclipse the cost of our past follies. Cleon, the head of our council, a man whose wisdom was rivaled only by the lines that time had etched upon his visage, raised a hand to still the tempest of debate. Sariel, watcher of the skies, your proposition treads a delicate line between benediction and subjugation. How can we, a people who have so fiercely clung to the autonomy of thought and deed, reconcile with the surrender to your ancient ways? Sariel's gaze lingered upon Cleon, an inscrutable sentinel. Cleon, your concerns are as valid as the pillars that support this hall. But consider the alternative, to remain stagnant, clinging to the remnants of a bygone era. The allegiance I speak of is not to the Nephilim per se, but to the pursuit of enlightenment, to the cosmic dance of evolution and the role you are destined to play within it. The debate among the council that followed was a ragbag of intellect and emotion, woven with threads of caution and ambition. Arguments flared and waned, casting shadows of doubt and flickers of hope upon the walls that had borne witness to our rise and our fall. I, Tara, a scholar by nature, weighed each word as a merchant might assay a precious metal. The allure of the Nephilim's offer was undeniable, the chance to reclaim a fragment of the greatness that was once ours. Yet the specter of dependence loomed large, the fear that in reaching for the stars, we might lose our grasp upon the earth that cradled us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the chamber in the hues of twilight, the council reached a tenuous accord. We would tentatively embrace the Nephilim's covenant, a pact forged with the hope of renewal, yet tempered by the will to maintain the essence of our Atlantean identity. Sariel, the watcher, regarded us with an expression that bordered on the paternal. "So it shall be," he intoned. "The path of resurgence is fraught with uncertainty, but it is a path you must tread with eyes open and heart steadfast. Atlantis shall rise not on the shoulders of the Nephilim, but on the indomitable spirit of its people." The chamber slowly emptied, leaving me to ponder the covenant we had wrought. The night air carried the scent of the sea, a briny reminder of our vulnerability and the promise of what lay beyond the veil of the familiar. As the stars blinked into existence above, I resolved to face the days ahead with vigilance, for the legacy of Atlantis and the Anunnaki was now inexorably intertwined, charting a course through uncharted waters toward a destiny as mysterious as the cosmos itself. Chapter 3, The Chosen Path. Sariel, his stature imposing yet serene, addressed the gathering, his voice resonating with the depth of ages. "Bearers of Atlantis' legacy, you stand ready to traverse pathways unfathomable to your forebears. The wisdom we impart is a balefire. Let it guide you as you navigate the resurgence of your mighty civilization." Beside me, an assembly of our most esteemed scholars and skeptics alike exchanged furtive glances. Among them was Damaris, a historian whose reverence for tradition often bordered on the obstinate. "Tara, this is a precipitous venture," he murmured, his tone laced with a disquiet that mirrored the flicker of torchlight against the stone. "To tether the fate of our youth to these celestial interlopers. Is it not the folly of our ancestors to seek dominion over the arcane that led to our downfall?" His words, though hushed, were like the clang of a bell in my mind. "Damaris, it is not dominion we seek, but enlightenment. Our previous epoch was marred by hubris, yes, but now we walk a path tempered by the humility of our trials. We must not let fear of the unknown be the shackle that binds our potential." The youths stepped forward, their countenances a canvas of fortitude as Sariel began the rite of initiation. With each phrase uttered in the ancient tongue of the Nephilim, a harmonic resonance filled the air, the very atmosphere thrumming with the promise of untapped knowledge. The pillars of light pulsed rhythmically, casting an otherworldly glow upon the initiates. I could see the conservative faction of our council, their brows furrowed, their whispers a susurrus of dissent. Cleon, standing tall and composed, approached me. "Tara, you champion this course with a fervor that is commendable, yet remember that our people are but newly emerged from the shadow of catastrophe. We must shepherd this transition with care, lest we lose ourselves to another's vision of what Atlantis should become. I nodded, acknowledging the weight of his counsel. Your wisdom has ever been the rudder that steers us through tempests, Cleon. I assure you, the path we choose is our own, and we will tread it with eyes unclouded by the past specters. As the rite concluded, a hush descended upon the assembly. The youths, now bearers of ancient mysteries, stood transformed, not by might, but by the dawning of awareness. The foundation of a new order was laid this night, an order that would be shaped not by the whims of the Nephilim, but by the collective will of Atlantis. We dispersed under the watchful eyes of the stars, the air thrumming with the palpable energy of change. The resurgence of our civilization was at hand, a stew being woven with threads of the past and the future. And though the road ahead was fraught with the unknown, it was a road we would navigate together, guided by the legacy of Atlantis and the wisdom of the Anunnaki. Chapter 4: Rebirth of Atlantis. Sariel stood with us, his presence a constant reminder of the partnership we'd forged. He watched, his countenance unreadable, as our engineers directed automatons of gleaming metal and crystal, their designs inspired by the intricate sketches that he had shared with us. These machines worked alongside our masons, binding stone with a precision that whispered of the future. Cleon approached, his gaze lingering on the seamless interplay between ancient craftsmanship and newfound technology. This academy, he mused aloud, is the embodiment of our path forward. It will be the heart from which the lifeblood of knowledge flows into the veins of Atlantis. I shared in his reflection, the weight of responsibility anchoring my thoughts. It is more than a repository of learning, Cleon. It's a flare, guiding our youth to horizons we dared not dream of. Yet I wonder, can the essence of Atlantis, our culture and beliefs, endure amidst such radical transformation? As if summoned by our discourse, Damaris joined our observation, his furrowed brow betraying an inner turmoil. I fear the very identity of Atlantis may dissolve, like salt in the sea, lost to the tides of change. We must take care not to forfeit our traditions in pursuit of progress. Sariel turned to us, his voice a measured cadence. Change is the crucible of growth. Yet, it need not consume the past. Atlantis' soul will persist, enriched by the wisdom it embraces, not diminished. The conversation continued. Sariel, Cleon, Damaris, and I exchanging thoughts as the Academy's foundation took shape. We debated the integration of the Nephilim's technology with our own, ensuring that each brick laid was an exemplification to our history and a step towards our future. As the sun reached its zenith, the ceremony commenced. The youth of Atlantis, their eyes alight with purpose, gathered around the site, their hands joined in solidarity. It was a gesture that transcended the mere physical, embodying the unity required to forge this nascent world. I turned my gaze to the horizon, where the skeletal frames of new buildings clawed at the sky, their forms a blend of organic curves and geometric precision. They harnessed the wind, the sun, and the very currents of the earth, embodying our newfound symbiosis with the elements. The day waned, and as the shadows grew long, I found myself standing amidst the buzz of construction, the air filled with the hum of energy and the scent of fresh stone and greenery. The challenge of weaving the strands of our past with the threads of the future loomed large, but I remained steadfast in my belief that the soul of Atlantis would thrive, not merely survive, in this oddment we were creating. The rebirth of Atlantis was not just an architectural endeavor. It was the rekindling of a civilization's spirit. With the guidance of the Nephilim and the resilience of our people, we were constructing more than buildings. We were building a legacy that would stand as a flare of hope and wisdom for ages to come. Chapter 5: Architects of Destiny. The Hall of Echoes was to be the crown jewel of our revitalized city, a vault of knowledge where the lore of Atlantis and the wisdom of the Nephilim would resonate for eternity. Today marked its inauguration, a celebration of unity and the promise of a future forged from the melding of two worlds. Yet, as I walked the streets lined with verdant flora that thrummed with life, I could sense the undercurrent of tension. The traditionalists, those who clung to the old ways like barnacles to a hull, watched with narrowed eyes. I overheard their murmurs, a discordant melody against the symphony of innovation. "Is it wise," queried an elder named Phaedrus, "to so hastily uproot the foundations of our customs? What becomes of Atlantis when its heart beats to an alien rhythm? Before I could respond, Sariel's voice, calm and resolute, cut through the gathering dusk. Phaedrus, the foundations you speak of will not be discarded but reinforced. We seek not to replace the heartbeat of Atlantis, but to ensure it endures, strengthened by a cadence that carries the echoes of the cosmos. I nodded, bolstering Sariel's perspective. Our past is the bedrock upon which we build, but we must not let it become a tether. The Hall of Echoes will be a proof to our resistance, a place where our children can drink from the well of history and gaze upon the stars from which we have so much to learn. The crowd that had formed around us, artisans, thinkers, farmers, all bore the marks of a day's labor, their hands and brows gilded with sweat and dust. Yet their eyes held the spark of curiosity, the unspoken question of what lay beyond the horizon of their understanding. As we neared the hall, its doors wide and inviting, the murmurs gave way to a collective intake of breath. Within, the walls were lined with shelves carved from the living rock, embedded with crystals that pulsed with the recorded wisdom of ages. Holographic projections danced between the aisles, celestial charts and scripts of ancient knowledge playing out in a silent ballet. Sariel gestured toward the assembled throng. This repository is but the first step. Together, we will chart a course through the uncharted, where every discovery will be a stone in the foundation of a society that honors the journey of its ancestors and embraces the boundless potential of its descendants. Cleon stepped forward, his voice steady, a counterpoint to the hum of wonder that filled the hall. We stand at the crossroads of destiny. Let us not be hasty in our judgments, nor falter in our courage. The Hall of Echoes will serve as a crucible within which the metal of our convictions will be tested and honed. The assembly nodded, a sea of heads bobbing in silent accord. As the stars emerged one by one to reclaim the sky, the Hall of Echoes thrummed with life, a flare of enlightenment that would guide the architects of our destiny. Atlantis was rising, an indomitable force, melding ancient traditions with the wisdom bestowed upon us by our celestial benefactors. The path would be fraught with resistance and uncertainty, but as night settled upon our city of light, I knew that the spirit of our people, tempered by the trials of the past and emboldened by the promise of the future, would endure. Chapter 6: The Harmony of Spheres. The night air was alive with the thrumming of the energy grids that underpinned our city, a witness to the technologies that Sariel had imparted to us. Yet, as I walked among the colonnades of the Central Academy, the suzerations of unease could not be entirely drowned out by the song of progress. It was then that a convoy of envoys from distant tribes crossed the threshold into our enlightened realm, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. These seekers of wisdom, drawn to the warning of our Renaissance, bore with them the potential for both alliance and discord. As they were ushered into the Hall of Echoes, Sariel greeted them with the poise of one who had played the role of intermediary between worlds countless times before. We welcome you, travelers from afar, to share in the bounty of understanding that flourishes within these walls, he intoned, his voice a resonant balm that smoothed the ripples of their uncertainty. Cleon, standing resolute by my side, offered a solemn nod. Your arrival heralds a new chapter in the archives of Atlantis. Let us weave together the threads of our experiences, creating a hodgepodge rich with the hues of collaboration. The leader of the convoy, a towering figure clad in garments that spoke of distant lands, stepped forward. We come in search of enlightenment, he declared, his accent thick with the cadence of his homeland. But tales of your city's ascent stir not only admiration but envy among those who would see their own fortunes rise. His words hung in the air, a stark reminder that our shining city, for all its grandeur, was not immune to the covetous gazes of those who lingered in the shadows of progress. I met his gaze, the spark of shared understanding igniting between us. Your concerns are well-founded. Atlantis seeks not to overshadow, but to uplift. The knowledge we offer is not a chalice of conquest, but a wellspring from which all may drink. The conversation that unfolded was a delicate dance of diplomacy and sincerity. Sariel and I, alongside our Atlantean brethren, engaged with the envoys, discussing the intricacies of trade, the exchange of knowledge, and the safeguarding of our collective advancements. As dawn crept over the horizon, bathing the city in hues of rose and gold, an accord was struck, a confluence of interests that promised mutual prosperity. The establishment of trade routes and the sharing of wisdom would serve as the sinews connecting Atlantis with the wider world. Yet even as our guests departed, their caravans laden with the fruits of our accord, I could not shake the awareness that with growth comes the inevitable allure for those who seek power over enlightenment. The threat of external forces, driven by jealousy and desire, loomed on the periphery of our idyllic existence. Sariel regarded me, his eyes reflecting the first light of day. "Fear not the shadows, Tara, for it is the nature of light to cast them. We shall meet any challenge with the unity and wisdom that thrives within the heart of Atlantis." And so, as the city awoke to the symphony of a new day, I embraced the role I had come to play in this ever-unfolding story. Atlantis was more than a city. It was an ideal, a warning of hope in a world teetering on the brink of change. We were the architects of destiny, and our legacy would echo through the harmony of spheres for generations to come. Chapter 7, The Seeds of Discord. It was during a seemingly ordinary discussion, one intended to chart the course of our educational endeavors, that the first seeds of discord were sown. Around the polished onyx table, a gathering of minds had convened, scholars, leaders, and visionaries all. Among them was Zephyrus, a formidable presence whose once keen intellect seemed increasingly captivated by the notion of Atlantis, not just as a lodestar of enlightenment, but as a dominion unto itself. "Consider the might of Atlantis," Zephyrus began, his voice a deep thrum that resonated through the chamber. "Our advancements in artifice and lore are unrivaled. Is it not our responsibility to ensure the stability of these lands, to guide the lesser fortunate towards a future under our stewardship?" A murmur of assent rose from a corner of the room, where a cadre of like-minded individuals nodded their agreement. It was a sensibility that would have once been anathema to our principles, a stark deviation from the harmonious society we had pledged to foster. I leaned forward, my hands pressing against the cool stone of the table. Stewardship, Zephyrus, or conquest? The prosperity of Atlantis was meant to be shared, not imposed. Our legacy is one of unity, of shared knowledge. To wield our power as a cudgel would be to repeat the mistakes that led to our ancestors' downfall. Sariel, ever the voice of temperance, joined the fray. Ambition, if left unchecked, can become as voracious as the ocean's depths. Atlantis has risen on the promise of progress for all, not dominion over the many. The path of conquest is a treacherous one, fraught with shadows that can engulf even the noblest of intentions. The chamber grew tense, the air thick with unspoken thoughts and veiled intentions. Zephyrus, undeterred, pressed on. "The world beyond our shores is rife with chaos. Without our guidance, what will become of the lesser tribes, the uninitiated? We have been given a gift, the knowledge of the Nephilim, and with it the power to shape the world." I stood, my gaze sweeping across the faces of those gathered. To shape the world, yes, but not to subjugate it. Our endeavor was to be the light that illuminates the path for others, not the flame that consumes them. The debate raged on, words sharpened like blades, ideals clashing with the cold steel of burgeoning ambition. As night descended and the stars bore witness to our strife, it became clear that a faction within Atlantis was coalescing, a group that sought to harness our advancements, not for enlightenment, but for the consolidation of power. In the days that followed, whispers of secret alliances filled the corridors of the academy. The unity that had once been our bulwark now seemed as fragile as glass, ready to splinter at the slightest provocation. The city that had risen from the ashes, that had thrived under the guidance of the Nephilim, now teetered on the brink of a precipice of its own making. My vision of a utopia, where knowledge reigned supreme and the pursuit of wisdom was our guiding star, was imperiled by the very people I sought to uplift. As I retired to my quarters, the weight of our choices heavy upon my shoulders, I knew that the coming days would test the mettle of our society. Atlantis, our jewel of progress, could either stand as a paragon of unity or fall victim to the hubris that now threatened to unravel the legacy we had fought so tirelessly to build. The harmony of spheres had given way to a discordant note, one that would echo through the chronicle of our history, for better or for worse. Chapter 8. the pride before the fall. As I, Tara, meandered through the bustling shipyard, the clamor of metal and the fervent shouts of laborers filled the air. My heart harbored a turmoil that mirrored the tumultuous sea, pride in our achievements, and yet a gnawing dread at the path we seemed to be hurtling down. Sariel strode beside me, his countenance somber amid the din of construction. Do you see, Tara? The very tools I gifted for the purpose of enlightenment are now being forged into instruments of dominion. This is a precipice from which there is no return should you choose to leap. I sighed, turning to meet his gaze. Sariel, your fears are not unfounded, but surely we are masters of our fate. These ships, these weapons, they are but safeguards, a means to ensure Atlantis remains unassailable, a sanctuary of knowledge. Sariel stopped, his presence commanding the attention of those around us. A sanctuary does not bristle with spears, nor does wisdom need defending with swords. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, and it is always the same, a tale of pride before the inevitable descent. Zephyrus, who had been overseeing the armament of the nearest vessel, approached us. His voice carried the authority of one who had become accustomed to command. Sariel, your counsel has been invaluable, but Atlantis is no longer a mere city-state, content with mere survival. We are an empire, and empires must extend their reach to ensure their glory endures. I turned to Zephyrus, my words edged with desperation. But at what cost? We sought to rebuild Atlantis as a lantern of hope, not a precursor of conquest. We must heed Sariel's warnings. We cannot become blinded by our own brilliance. The air grew thick with tension, the sea's briny scent mingling with the odor of smelted iron and burning timber. Workers paused, their gazes flitting between Sariel, Zephyrus, and me, sensing the undercurrents of a confrontation more daunting than the crafting of any warship. Zephyrus's laugh, devoid of mirth, echoed against the hulls of the vessels. Blinded? No, Tara. For the first time we see clearly. Atlantis will rise, not just from the sea, but over all who would dare challenge us. Our destiny is to lead, and lead we shall. Sariel's eyes closed briefly, a gesture of grief for a future he seemed to foresee. So it has been spoken, and so the thread of destiny weaves a pattern I had hoped to avoid. Atlantis, do not let your pride be the harbinger of your fall. The words lingered, even as the noise of the shipyard resumed its bedlam. I watched as Sariel departed, his silhouette growing smaller against the backdrop of a city that had lost sight of its purpose. The stars emerged one by one, their twinkling almost a reproach to the hubris of the world below. The mighty warships stood ready, their shadows stretching across the water like dark omens. And I stood alone, questioning whether the echoes of past mistakes would reverberate through the halls of our future, or if there was still time to alter the course of our fate. Chapter 9, The Shadow of Hubris. Sariel stood upon the grand balcony of the Central Academy, his figure a singular vigilante against the backdrop of gathering clouds. I approached him, the sounds of the city's unrest a distant clamor compared to the silence that hung between us. Tara, he said, his voice the whisper of leaves in a forgotten grove, I have watched empires rise and fall, seen the folly of pride and the tragedy it begets. It seems the lessons of the past are as ephemeral as shadows at dusk. I leaned upon the balustrade, my gaze cast out upon the churning sea. Sariel, is there not a way to avert this path? Your wisdom has been the compass by which we navigated the storm. Must you depart and leave us to founder upon the rocks of our own making? His gaze turned toward the heavens, where lightning danced like celestial serpents. I came to Atlantis to guide, not to govern. The choice is made, the path embraced. It is yours and yours alone. My presence here has become a catalyst for ambitions that I cannot condone. The truth of his words stung like the salt of the sea, and I knew the hour of the Nephilim's departure was at hand. Your teachings have taken root, Sariel. There are those among us who still seek the harmony you envisioned. Can you not stay and help us right the course? He shook his head, a gesture that bore the weight of centuries. The cycle must play out, Tara. The Nephilim's presence has served to hasten what now unfolds. We must withdraw, lest our influence further unbalance the scales. A roll of thunder punctuated his declaration, and I felt the finality of it settle in my bones. The Nephilim would return to the obscurity from whence they came, leaving Atlantis to grapple with the consequences of its choices. Will you return? Should we find our way once more? I asked, the plea evident in my tone. Sariel's eyes met mine, an ocean of sorrow and wisdom within their depths. The future is a river with many tributaries, Tara. Should the waters of time bring Atlantis back to the shores of enlightenment, perhaps our paths shall cross again. With those parting words, he stepped away from the balcony, his form receding into the marble halls of the academy, leaving me to watch as the first drops of rain began to fall. The cityscape of Atlantis, with its towering spires and gleaming domes, seemed to shrink beneath the shadow of hubris that now loomed over us. As the storm broke in earnest, unleashing its fury upon the land, the departure of the Nephilim was marked by the silence of the heavens. Their ships, like silvered leaves upon the wind, ascended beyond the veil of clouds, leaving behind a city on the precipice of war. The streets below were a clutter of motion, the people of Atlantis moving with a frenetic energy as the drums of conflict sounded in the distance. And I, standing alone as the rain washed over me, knew that the shadow of hubris would not lift until the lessons of our folly were learned in the crucible of what was to come. The legacy of Atlantis and the Anunnaki now rested in the hands of those who remained, a test of whether we would ascend to the heights of our potential or be consumed by the flames of our own making. Chapter 10, The Unraveling. I found myself at the heart of the city, where the once magnificent edifice now lay in ruins, its walls crumbling, the echoes of wisdom lost amidst the roar of conflict. Around me, factions of Atlanteans clashed over the remnants of Nephilim technology, their eyes alight with the fire of greed, their hands stained with the blood of their kin. Zephyrus, his face a mask of grim determination, stood commanding a group of insurgents, his once noble features twisted by the lust for power. "Secure the artifacts," he bellowed above the din, pointing towards a cache of gleaming devices that hummed with an otherworldly energy. Cleon, flanked by his own contingent, met Zephyrus's aggression with a steely resolve. "This is madness, Zephyrus. The Nephilim entrusted their knowledge to us for the betterment of all, not for the dominance of a few." The air crackled with the energy of charged weapons and the cries of the wounded. I navigated the battlefield, my heart heavy with the knowledge that our pursuit of power had turned brother against brother, unraveling the very fabric of our society. A young engineer, her hands trembling as she clutched a salvaged tome of Nephilim lore, caught my eye. "Tara," she implored, desperation etched into her features, "we must preserve what remains. The wisdom contained within these pages is our last hope." I nodded, taking the tome from her hands. "We will find a way. By the stars above, we must." The conflict raged on, the city itself becoming an anvil upon which the future of Atlantis was being mercilessly forged. The roar of destruction was relentless, and I knew that if we did not cease this senseless struggle, Atlantis would be reduced to nothing more than a footnote in the memoir of history. In the midst of the fray, I sought out Zephyrus, hoping to appeal to whatever shred of reason he had left. "Zephyrus, look around you. Our city falls. Is this the legacy you wish to leave?" His eyes, once full of the light of curiosity and hope, now burned with a feverish intensity. "The Nephilim are gone, Tara. Their rules no longer bind us. We are free to forge our own destiny, to wield this power as we see fit. Their departure was a warning, not an emancipation." I retorted, my voice rising above the clamor. "We were meant to be stewards, not tyrants." But my words were lost on the wind, drowned out by the sound of collapsing masonry as another section of the Hall of Echoes succumbed to the inferno. The very air wept with the sorrow of lost knowledge, and the ground shook with the fury of a civilization tearing itself apart. As dawn broke, the smoke of the night's devastation mingled with the mist rising from the sea, shrouding Atlantis in a veil of mourning. The city that had once been a landmark of enlightenment was now a labyrinth of sorrow, its corridors echoing with the lament of a dream undone. The unraveling of Atlantis was not wrought by external conquest, but by the insidious tendrils of our own ambition. And as I stood amid the ruins, the weight of our folly pressing upon my soul, I knew that the legacy of Atlantis and the Anunnaki would be a tale of warning to the ages, a covenant to the price of hubris and the fragile nature of utopia. Chapter 11, Ashes and Wisdom. The air was heavy with the scent of dampened embers. Around me, the survivors of our once magnificent city sifted through debris, their faces etched with the steadiness to rebuild from the foundation of our ancestors and the legacy of the Nephilim. We had been humbled, but within us the ember of wisdom endured, ready to ignite anew. Cleon, his visage no longer bearing the regal certainty of council leadership, but the weathered lines of toil, approached with a measured tread. Tara, he began, his voice a timbre of resignation and determination interwoven. The path before us is strewn with the remnants of our past arrogance. Yet we must tread forward, must we not? I nodded. Yes, Cleon. We walk a path paved by the lessons of yesteryears. The grandiosity of old Atlantis lies broken, but from these ashes, a new vision must arise, one not of dominion, but of harmony and balance. A group of youths gathered around us, their eyes reflecting the nascent flame of hope. Among them was Lysander, a bright spark whose curiosity had not been dimmed by the devastation. Tara, tell us, how will we rebuild differently? How will we ensure that the horrors of war and the abyss of hubris will not reclaim us? His queries hung in the air, and I felt the weight of the mantle of leadership settle upon my shoulders. By remembering, Lysander, by engraving the lessons of our downfall into the cornerstone of every structure we erect, into the heart of every child we educate, we shall look to the balance of nature as our guide and the wisdom of the Nephilim as our compass. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd, and hands that had been wringing in despair now reached out to clear the rubble, to salvage the unbroken and repurpose the shattered. The spirit of our people, unquenchable even by the deluge of catastrophe, began to kindle the flames of rebirth. Damaris, who had once clung to the old ways like a shipwrecked sailor to flotsam, now stood shoulder to shoulder with those who envisioned a different Atlantis. We were seduced by the allure of knowledge as power, but now we see it as the vessel of our redemption. Let us forge a society that venerates equilibrium over exaltation, wisdom over wealth. The sun dipped below the horizon, and in the twilight we began to lay the foundations of a new Atlantis. Each stone set was a covenant of our commitment to a future where grandeur was measured not by the height of our towers, but by the depth of our understanding. In the days that followed, as we toiled amidst the ruins, a new rhythm took hold, a cadence that echoed the harmonious interplay of sea and shore, of wind and wing. The academy, once a citadel of learning, was reimagined as a haven where knowledge was shared freely, without the shadow of ulterior motive. As the moon rose, casting its silvery glow upon the nascent city, I walked among the people, my heart buoyed by their elasticity. Atlantis had fallen, yes, but the wisdom of its legacy, tempered by the trials of hubris, would rise again. We would walk the chosen path, guided by the echoes of our ancestors and the celestial wisdom of the Nephilim, toward a horizon bright with the promise of a dawn reborn. Chapter 12, Legends of the Deep. You see, I began, my voice carrying over the sound of the sea. Atlantis was not just a city of stone and ambition, but of flesh and spirit, graced and cursed by the gods. The Nephilim, those celestial beings, once walked among us, their wisdom as vast as the ocean is deep. A young man, his hair the color of the sandy cliffs behind us, leaned in, his curiosity a tangible force. But Tara, how did such a civilization, so blessed by the gods, come to fall? I cast my gaze upward, where the stars spun silently in the firmament. It was pride, young Icarus, a pride that grew like a tree, mighty and tall, until it obscured the sun of our better judgment. We reached too high, grasped too greedily, and like your namesake, we too felt the searing heat of hubris. An old woman, her eyes as gray as the pebbles underfoot, her hands gnarled like the driftwood scattered by the shore, spoke next. And what of the Nephilim, the ones who brought enlightenment? Wherefore did they depart? The Nephilim, I responded, saw the seeds of our destruction take root and knew that their presence would only serve to hasten our fall. They retreated to the heavens, leaving us to chart our course, either to navigate the stormy seas of our own making or to be swallowed by them. A child, no more than a slip of a girl with hair like the night sky, tugged at the hem of my tunic. Tara, do the Nephilim still watch over us? Do they weep for what we have lost? I knelt to meet her innocent eyes, feeling the weight of centuries in my heart. They are watchers, little one. Whether they weep or hope, I cannot say, but I believe they wait for us to find our way back to the stars. to the wisdom we once held so dear. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows that danced across the faces of my audience, etching their features in a tableau of rapt attention. It was here, in this congregation of the past and future, that the story of Atlantis lived on, melding with the myths and beliefs of a new age. I rose, my bones protesting the movement, and gestured to the sea, where the moonlight painted a silver path across the waves. The mystery of the Nephilim endures in whispers, in the rustling of the leaves and the murmur of the tides. Atlantis may have sunk beneath the waves, but its essence rises with each new dawn, a haunting reminder of the cyclical nature of civilizations. The gathering dispersed, each person carrying away a fragment of the tale, a seed of the past that might one day bloom into understanding. And as the night deepened, I remained by the shore, the sentinel of a history that refused to be forgotten. In the battle against time, the truths of Atlantis' legacy were my charge to keep, to pass on until the echoes of our story became indistinguishable from the fabric of legend itself. The tale of Atlantis, graced and cursed by the gods, would persist, a myth etched into the consciousness of humanity, kindling fascination and wonder for generations to come. The end. We're glad you were here for Anunnaki's Atlantis. With StoryWave AI, your prompts become unforgettable tales. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for daily explorations into storytelling. April 2024, fare thee well.